if you've ever had to work with data, you know the pain, right? That feeling of getting data that's just messy and inconsistent. Well, today we are diving into a secret weapon in Oracle SQL that turns all that chaos into pure clarity. It's the single row function toolkit, and trust me, mastering this is a total game changer for anyone in a tech role. I mean, we've all been there. You get a data dump, and it's a nightmare of weird capitalization, extra spaces, jumbled up formats. It is a universal headache. But the good news is, Oracle SQL has a powerful, built-in solution just waiting for you. And honestly, that is the perfect way to think about them. They really are your all-in-one solution for data cleanup. Just like a Swiss Army knife has a specific tool for pretty much any little job, these functions give you the right tool for the right task right inside your query. Okay, so what are we actually talking about here? Officially, a single row function is a pre-built command in Oracle, and its magic is in its simplicity. It takes one row of data, does its job, and gives you back exactly one result for that row. One in, one out, every single time. This is such a brilliant way to illustrate the concept. I mean, you wouldn't slap an Instagram filter on a photo and expect to get 5 different pictures back, would you? Of course not. You get one modified photo. It's exactly the same thing here. You apply a function to the name John Smith, you get back John Smith. One clean result for one messy row. Simple. And look, these aren't some obscure functions for weird academic problems. Not at all. In fact, over 70% of real-world professional SQL queries use at least one of these functions. So learning them isn't just a nice to have. It's absolutely fundamental to writing good, effective SQL. So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to break down the 4 essential toolkits you really need to get a handle on. We'll start with text, then jump over to numbers, then dates, and we'll wrap up with the really critical functions for handling logic and those super tricky null values. First up, the text toolkit. This is probably the set of functions you're going to use the most, day in and day out. It's your absolute go-to for cleaning up any kind of character data. You know, things like names, addresses, or product descriptions. And that is such a fantastic analogy. You know all those little things you do to clean up a document in Microsoft Word? Well, you can do all those same things, trimming spaces, changing cases, replacing text, directly in your SQL query with these functions. Let's see a few in action. This slide just shows you how much power you have at your fingertips. With a function like INITCAP, you can instantly standardize names. With SUBSTR, you can pull out things like account codes or product prefixes. And with RTRIM, you can finally get rid of those invisible trailing spaces that cause so many data matching headaches. Okay, here's a pro tip that is going to save you a ton of trouble down the line. If you ever need to find the length of a piece of text, always wrap it in a trim function first. That way, you're counting the actual characters, not a bunch of data entry errors. It's a tiny step that makes your code so much more reliable. All right, next up, the number toolkit. Anytime your query involves money or measurements or any kind of math, these functions are going to be your new best friend. Remember that scientific calculator you had back in math class? You know, with all those special buttons for rounding and powers and roots? Well, that's exactly what this toolkit is. Oracle has built all that same functionality right into the language, so it's ready for you to use in any query you write. Now, this is a really important distinction to get right. Round does exactly what you think. It rounds a number up or down. But trunc, that's short for truncate, is different. It just chops off the decimal places. No rounding whatsoever. So 15.78 becomes 15, not 16. And that little difference is absolutely critical in some fields. And here's why that matters so much. In finance, if you round millions of tiny transactions, you can actually create or lose money over time because of these tiny compounding errors. Truncating is often the way to go because it's predictable, it's consistent, and it prevents those kinds of cascading mistakes in huge calculations. All right, our third toolkit is all about time. Now, it's super important to understand that dates in SQL are not just strings of text. Nope, they are smart objects with their own rules and functions, and this toolkit lets you unlock all of that power. This is the perfect way to picture it. Just think about everything your calendar does automatically, right? It calculates the last Friday of the month, figures out how many months are left on a subscription, or schedules a reminder for 6 months from today. All of that is powered by the exact same logic that you'll find in these date functions. So let's look at some real-world examples. Need to calculate how long an employee has been with the company? Months between is perfect for that. Need to figure out when a 6-month subscription renewal is due? Add months handles it in one clean step. These functions solve common business problems so elegantly. Okay, here's another game-changing tip. Dates can also store time right down to the second. So if you compare two dates, say one from midnight and one from noon, SQL won't see them as equal. Using TRUNC on your dates strips away that time component, making sure you're only comparing the day. This one little trick prevents a whole category of really common and frustrating bugs. And that brings us to our final toolkit, which you could argue is the most important one of all. This is all about handling the single biggest source of bugs in SQL, missing data, also known as nulls. Mastering this toolkit is what separates clean, professional code from brittle, amateur scripts. And that's exactly what they are. A single null value in a calculation can break your entire query. These functions are your safety net. They let you anticipate and handle those nulls gracefully, so your code doesn't crash and your numbers stay accurate. This slide shows our 3 heavy hitters. NVL is the simple way to swap in a default value, like turning a null salary into a 0. Coalesce is even more powerful. It scans through a list of columns and just gives you the very first one that isn't null. And case? Well, case is your full-blown if-then-else logic, letting you build complex business rules right into your query. Now, listen up, because this is a huge deal for anyone writing serious enterprise-level code. While NVL is easy, Coalesce is the industry standard. It's more flexible, it's safer with different data types, and, this is the big one, it's an ANSI standard. That just means it's a universal command. A query you write with Coalesce in Oracle will also work on other databases, like SQL Server or Postgres. It's portable. So let's bring it all together. Your path to mastering this stuff is actually pretty straightforward. First, you spot the messy data. Second, you pick the right tool from the right toolkit. Third, you apply it and transform that data. And the results? You'll be writing cleaner, more powerful, and way more professional queries every single time. And that brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with. Think about the data you work with every single day. What is that one annoying, messy column that always gives you trouble? Because I'm willing to bet you now have the exact tool in your toolkit to go and solve that problem for good.